I don't remember half of the books that I read this month, and I didn't even put any notes this time around. But thankfully, I had the smart idea to actually input my books on Storygraph. Storygraph is here to help save the day. I'm here to talk about the books that I read in the month of October, and I read a total of 13 books. All of them were physical books. I did not read any Kindle books in this month, and I'm going to talk about them in order of first read to recently read. Let us just jump right in because we have a lot to talk about. Well, early, not as much as like the other months. I think still a significant amount considering how I went traveling for 10 days. So I'm still pretty proud of the fact that I read 13 books. Anyway, let us jump right into the first book of the month of October. An exciting book. Powerless by Lauren Roberts. Wow, this book was crazy, insane, amazing. I have a reading vlog. I'm going to link it in the description box or in the cards somewhere. I think it's this side. This is an enemies to lovers YA, a fantasy book, a first book of a series, and you follow two main characters. You follow Peyton and you follow Kai. And in this world, in this society, there's this thing called the plague. And when the plague arrived, it killed a lot of people, but some people survived the plague. Some of them became the elites, and those people, they have magical powers. And those who survived but did not get any powers are called the ordinaries. Peyton is an ordinary and Kai is an elite. To be exact, Kai is the prince of the country. But they have this competition to figure out who is the strongest elite in the country. It's called the trials, and Peyton is somehow chosen to be a part of the trials, even though she's an ordinary, but she pretends to be an elite. She pretends to be a psychic, and Kai's power is very interesting. Kai copies powers. So if you, for example, you're in front of him and you have the power of fire, then he can copy your power and also have the power of fire. Peyton and Kai kind of met before the trials. You know what? Read and find out, because it's really interesting to go into this like a little bit blind, but that's the whole world building of this book, and it's really easy to read. It's really fun to read, and the reason why this book was just like legendary for me was because it's been a while since I've read a fantasy book, a romance fantasy book that has made me squeal and giggle and just love the main character so much. You guys have no idea how much I loved Kai. This book I read in the beginning of October. I'm pretty sure I actually read it at the end of September, and then I finished it in the 1st of October, which is why it's in this wrap-up. But I still remember vividly everything that happened in this book. The emotions that this book brought me, it rendered me speechless sometimes. And plot-wise, even though it wasn't the most unique plotline, because it does kind of resemble the Hunger Games, I'm pretty sure she took inspo from the Hunger Games, but it was still really fun to kind of follow their journey and to learn all of the other sub-characters' powers. Oh, did not mention this, forgot to mention this, but in this society, like 3 decades ago, the king decided that he wants to kill off all the ordinaries in this world, which is why Peyton has to pretend to be an elite, because she is not supposed to be alive. The writing style just makes you want to read it more, and it keeps you on your toes. It's a really fun book. I highly recommend it. I think in that vlog I rated it 4.75 or something, but because on Storygraph apparently it's 4.75, but I'm pretty sure I upped it to a 5-star, so this is a 5-star book for me. I still remember what the heck happened in this book. Say no more, say no more. The next book I read is Business or Pleasure by Lynn Soloman. The female main character is a ghostwriter. She's supposed to ghostwrite for this actor who's called Finnegan Walsh, and when she meets up with him, she realizes that she had a one-night stand with him before, but she had a very bad experience of a one-night stand. So one day when they were working on the memoir, Chandler kind of blurts out that she thought that the one-night stand was just unsatisfactory. So they end up striking a deal where she is going to teach him how to pleasure a girl, and she's going to write his memoir. What I liked about this book, the characters were very open and they were very communicative. I just didn't feel like there were sparks flying between the two characters. I couldn't feel any chemistry between them. If you guys check out my reading vlog, that will be more in-depth about my review. but I didn't enjoy it that much, which is why I don't remember what the plot is. I rated it 3 stars on Storygraph, but I think I'm gonna put it down to a 2.5 because once again, I don't remember much about the book. I don't remember how it ended or how they got together. The next book I read is The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a part of the Inheritance Games series. You technically need to read the trilogy, but you don't need to read this if you want to read just the trilogy. But if you're a big fan of the trilogy and if you're like me and you love the characters, I highly recommend reading this. This is more of like a very, very, very thick novella. However, there is a second book coming following this one, so maybe not a novella, but it does feel like fan service in my opinion. Plot wise, you follow Grayson and Jameson as they kind of figure out more of their family background. I don't want to spoil too much because a lot of this you need to read the Inheritance Games, and if you have not read that trilogy yet, I highly recommend reading it. It's really, really good. It's a 5-star series for me. So overall, it was just a really, really good read, and I really like seeing Grayson and Jameson's point of view because you don't get their point of views in the Inheritance Games trilogy. And I also really liked Jameson and Avery's romance in this book. I wasn't that interested in Grayson's POV, but Jameson's one I was really, really into. Overall, I rated it 4 stars, mainly because, once again, it felt like fan service, but because I really like the characters, I just really like this book. I get to see more of their thoughts. I get to see more of them. In retrospect, nothing really happened, so that's why I'm rating this 4 stars. I realized that I have a lot of 5-star reads this month. I didn't expect that, but I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This one I don't have reading vlogs on because I read this on my trip. I brought 2 books and the only one that I finished. And in this one, you follow a woman called Clementine, and she lives in this apartment that was given to her by her aunt. And from when she was young, her aunt keeps telling her stories that this apartment is magical and it kind of travels back in time. One day when Clementine goes back to her apartment, she realizes someone was in her apartment, and then she figures out that the apartment was currently 7 years in the past and that the guy that was living there was also 7 years in the past. And it was one of the cutest things, the most sweetest romance that I've ever read in my life. I loved the writing. I loved the little magical part of this book. Even though it's technically a romance, I like that there's a little bit of fantasy elements. The idea of time being warped inside that little apartment, I really like the concept, and I can understand why a lot of people really, really love this book because this book took me by surprise. I just loved the characters so much. I loved both individually and I loved both of them together. I rated this 5 stars. It was just so good. It made me smile a lot. I was reading this on the plane and I couldn't put it down. I then read A Twist of the Blade by S.M. Gaither. This is the second book of the Shadows and Crowns series. I read the first one also in a reading vlog, not sure which one, but I'm gonna link it somewhere. I decided to rate this second book 4 stars because you follow the events of the first book, which is why I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's going to spoil the first book. But what I really liked more is that I get to know the characters a little bit more, and the enemies to lovers romance that goes on in this book is just really, really good. I really like the gods kind of playing a bigger role in this book, which is why I give it 4 stars. The reason why it's not more is because this didn't really capture my attention that much. I was reading it, and when I'm reading it, it's fine, but when I put it down, I don't really want to pick it up, which is why I'm giving this 4 stars. Overall, a really strong series. We'll definitely grab the 3rd book next month. Oh, and if you guys don't know what the series is about, you follow a mercenary called Casa Graythorne, and she does her job very well because she wants to earn money to buy medicine for her mentor who is dying, and there's this plague that kills a lot of people in this world, and she is a survivor of the plague, but her mentor is currently dying from the plague. Not a lot of people survive the plague, and I'm pretty sure, as I remember, the king / the prince really wants to kill people who survive the plague because they seem to be the one that's causing even more sickness to the world. But it's actually something to do with the gods, and it's really, really fun. Cassia ends up having to work with the commander of the king. The king captured her, but then decided not to kill her and to send her off to figure out how to stop the plague. Then we read Hopeless by Elsie Silver. I read this in a reading vlog. I'm gonna link it somewhere again. This is the last book of the Chestnut Springs series. You follow Bo and Bailey. If you guys know, I love the Chestnut Springs series. Flawless and Heartless has my heart. I've been wanting to read Bo's story for a very long time because ever since like the 2nd book, I think I've been wanting his story to come out. So reading this was just like a breath of fresh air. I really, really liked it. In the beginning, it wasn't my favorite because I felt like Bo's attraction towards Bailey and vice versa was very physical. But I remember like in the halfway mark, I suddenly really liked it because I felt like there was more pining and more tension between them. And even though it was physical attraction, it ended up being more than just physical attraction. Overall, I give this 4.5. In this book, you have age gap, by the way. Beau is 35 and Bailey is 22. Really good series. Please check out the Chessa Spring series. I'm gonna talk about these two together because I did read them simultaneously, and that is All In and Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. These are the third and fourth books of the Natural series, basically the last two books of the Natural series. And in the Natural series, you follow a group of 5 teenagers who were recruited by the FBI to join this program called the Naturals, and it's because they're naturals at criminal investigations such as profiling, reading lies, and reading emotions. And with the 4 books, you kind of have this big mystery plot following a main female character called Cassie, and it's the mystery behind her mother's death. I did not expect that kind of ending and that kind of revelation, so it was really good overall. I really liked both books. All In was a 4.5 and Bad Blood was 5 stars. First 2 books, I think I rated both 4 stars, but with these 2 books, you just kind of get to know all of the characters so well. And with Bad Blood, this left me with my jaw on the floor a couple of times because everything that was revealed in this book, it was just creepy, it was thrilling, it was mysterious, and I really liked it. But yeah, I just really liked the series. I love Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing. It was chef's kiss. Now we're gonna talk about 5 books, and these 5 books I recently read. It's going to be in a video. I'm not sure if it's gonna come out before this one, but if it comes out before this one, I will link it somewhere. Let us talk about the first book that I read in this video. That is Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is the companion novel following Icebreaker, and if you guys don't know Icebreaker, then you are living under a rock. But Wildfire is about Russ and Aurora. Russ apparently is a part of the hockey team. When I first read this, I didn't realize that Russ was a part of the hockey team. If you guys read Icebreaker and you don't know who Russ is, if you remember clearly, when Stassi went to a bar and some people were harassing her, someone saved her in that bar, and that guy was Russ. She called him Muffin. Do you remember that? Essentially, that's the Russ that we're following. And Russ and Aurora, they have a one-night stand in a university party, and then they end up meeting again as camp counselors. It's kind of slow burn, and you really get to know each character individually, and that's what I really like. I rated this 4.25, I think, in the video, but I decided to rate this 4 stars. At least in my story graph, it is 4 stars. And then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This is the other book that I brought on vacation, so I read 80 pages and then I continued on in that video. And this is about Evangeline and the Prince of Hearts called Jax. This is actually like a companion series following the Caraval trilogy, and I did read the Caraval trilogy before, so going into this, I know exactly who Jax was. I read the Caraval trilogy, I knew his character, and I really liked his character in that trilogy, so coming into this, I wasn't surprised by his character. But I felt like if you have not read the Caraval trilogy yet, then you would appreciate his character a bit more, because that's what my friend told me. She didn't read the Caraval trilogy, she really liked this one because she felt like Jack was just an interesting character, and that's how I felt when I read the Caraval trilogy. With this book, you follow Evangeline and Jax, and Evangeline has the love of her life, but that guy is getting married to her stepsister. She wants to stop the wedding, so she ends up striking a deal with Jax. In exchange for his help to stopping the wedding, he asks for 3 kisses to be given to his liking. It's really good. You get a whimsical fairy tale sort of feeling. There are lots of balls, really pretty ballroom dresses descriptions. Even the main female character has pink hair. A lot of things happen in here that is just unexpected. The last thing you will expect will happen in this book, so that's why I had such a roller coaster ride with this book, and I ended up rating this 4.25. I really didn't like Evangeline. She was very naive, very gullible, doesn't want to listen to people's advice. It's just really hard to read her character, but I heard from a few people that she gets a lot better in the second book, so I'm hoping to really like the second book. That is Once Upon a Broken Heart, and then I read Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This is the second book of the Serpent and Dove trilogy, and not gonna talk too much about it because I actually rated this really low. This is a 2-star book. I was very disappointed with this one. A lot of things happened, but nothing really happened. It just felt like a very long filler book, and I felt like the characters' personality and character growth that happened in the first book, they kind of took 10 steps backwards, and suddenly they're just very childish. I didn't feel like there was any interesting parts of the book at all. The beginning 100 pages were great, and then suddenly just went completely wham. So I didn't have fun. This was a 2-star book. Serpent and Dove, the first book was great, but I don't know why the second book was not up to par. And then I read Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings. Wow, this book was a roller coaster ride. You follow BJ and Magnolia Park's journey, and if you guys don't know what the Magnolia Parks universe is, I feel like a freaking parrot saying this because everyone says it, but it really is Gossip Girl but London version. Rich, upscale living type of family drama with these characters. And Magnolia and BJ are basically the love of each other's lives, but they're very toxic towards each other, so you follow that kind of relationship. And this is the third book. I really like this book. You guys can see my annotations. I felt like BJ's character growth in this was just absolutely amazing. I have grown to really like him. I really hated him in the first book, so if the character grows on me, it's a really good book. And Jessa Hastings writes like a poet. Her prose is really beautiful. Her writing is spectacular. I rated this 4.5. The relationship just doesn't have this spark that I feel like the Daisy Hates books have. I do highly recommend the series. Please just take it with like a grain of salt. They are toxic, but it's just really fun. The last book I read in the month of October is Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. Not gonna talk too much about it as well because I rated this very low. This is a 2-star book. Follow Misha and Ryan. They're both pen pals. They were pen pals since 5th grade, and then they still wrote to each other 7 years later. They're now high school seniors. Ryan and Misha are both in different high schools. Misha stops writing to Ryan 3 months before they turned high school seniors. Ryan is just like this popular cheerleader girl who actually doesn't like herself in the school because she pretends he's someone else. And one day a new student comes into the high school and he's called Mason, and actually he's Misha. Ryan doesn't know that it's Misha, but Misha knows who Ryan is. Misha doesn't like Ryan because she's different than the girl that wrote him letters, and Ryan's still trying to figure out why Misha stopped writing to her. The reason why this is 2 stars and not like 1 star is because I actually liked the plot of Misha going into the high school, because he had a motive of entering Ryan's high school in the last year, and that motive has nothing to do with Ryan, so I really liked that plot line. It kept me going, but their romance was just very deranged. I didn't really like the fact that Misha called her names in the beginning because Misha didn't really like her. He called her names, like really bad names, and if it was me, I would be crossing this guy off my list. He would be a red flag. By the way, can you guys hear snoring? If you guys can, my dog is literally sleeping right next to the camera. Anyway, Punk 57, not a good book. 2 stars. That being said, that is the end of my October wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I explained some things properly. Yeah, if you guys like this video, don't forget to like it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It will mean a lot to me, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye!